Hello.
Welcome to Queer Cinema Catchup. I'm Joe.
And I'm Allison.
And this is the podcast where we talk about movies, TV, and miscellaneous topics through the queer lens.
Through the queer lens.
We're doing it.
We are the queer lens.
I'm the left eye.
I'm the right eye.
Today we're doing a double feature. We will be talking about Mysterious Skin and 13.
Mm-hmm.
Two coming-of-age movies, one more heavily queer than the other. Not to say the other one isn't queer.
Exactly. Both dealing with heavy topics.
Very heavy topics.
Trigger warning. We won't be going into great detail, but there will be discussion of child abuse and child endangerment or children using drugs and things like that. So just if that's like a heavy topic for you and you'd rather not listen, this is your time to maybe hop out now.
Hop out.
Hop out.
Now's your time to take off the queer lens and go about your day.
Yes. And the reason we decided to do these movies together is not actually the reason that I thought we were doing them together. While we were watching Mysterious Skin, somehow I got it in my head that that it was the same director as 13. But that's not accurate.
I was shocked to discover that Brady Corbett is in Mysterious Skin as one of the main characters. Brady Corbett, yes, the one who directed The Brutalist.
Isn't that crazy?
And he also is in the movie 13. So that was like the joint connection.
Connective tissue.
But I feel like they are very similar a way. And one is really interesting because one deals with from a male perspective.
Yes.
And one deals from a female perspective.
Very true.
And and both kind of from the same time period.
Mm-hmm.
But do you want, not that we have to split it up by
gender,
but do you want to do a quick bio on 13?
Sure.
I'll do a quick bio on Mysterious Skin. And then also
13 is a 2003 teen drama film directed by Catherine Hardwicke, written by Hardwicke and Nikki Reed, who is also an actress in the film and was only 14 at the time of filming. Also starring Holly Hunter, Evan Rachel Wood, and Jeremy Sisto, Brady.
Starring Evan Rachel Wood?
Yeah.
I feel like Evan Rachel Wood is the star.
Well, I added the also because I said Nikki Reed, who starred in the film, and then I said and also starring Holly Hunter and Evan Rachel Wood. But yes, the main character is Evan Rachel Wood's character. Vanessa Hudgens is in this movie in her debut acting role. Fun fact. And it's loosely based on Nikki Reed's life from ages 12 to 13. The film's plot follows a young girl named Tracy, a 7th grader in Los Angeles who begins dabbling in substance abuse, sex, self-harm, and crime after befriending a troubled classmate played by Nikki Reed. The screenplay for 13 was written in 6 days by Hardwicke and the then 14-year-old Reed. Originally, it was going to be a comedy, and then they kind of landed on this more serious endeavor. And that is the film 13. It debuted at the Sundance Film Festival in 2003. And Hardwicke won the Sundance Directing Drama Award for this film. And Hunter was nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the Academy Awards. I know. I tried to tell you that during the movie because every time Joe wasn't a fan necessarily of... Were you not a fan? I feel like you
13? I really liked it.
No. Holly Hunter's acting.
Oh. I liked it, but it feels dated in a way, but not to say it's bad. I just kind of... I think it's like it's a type of character that I don't think had been seen before at that time, but I feel like we've seen more of that, especially like with Euphoria or like even like Mean Girls, like Amy Poehler, not to say that she's vapid in any way, but kind of like the mom is like, I'm not just like any mom. I'm kind of like, I want to understand you. And so I think for the time, I think it was really, it was almost, she's not earnest, but it was like almost earnest in a way of how she was related to her daughter.
I thought that was earnest. I also thought she came across as a little clueless in the beginning. Like all this stuff, she doesn't notice that her daughter pierced her tongue? How? They're talking every day. There's some things about the mom. They're doing drugs in the bedroom in a house with windows that look, you can see everything that's going on. The mom has no idea?
Yeah.
Question mark?
Yeah.
Anyway, tell me about Mysterious Skin.
Mysterious Skin is a 2004 coming-of-age drama. Kind of surprised that 13 came out before Mysterious Skin.
I'm not actually.
The film is written, produced, and directed by Greg Araki, adapted from Scott Himes' 1995 novel of the same name. The film tells the story of two pre-adolescent boys who both experience sexual abuse as children and how it affects their lives in different ways into their young adulthood. One boy becomes a reckless. This seems like a very judgmental bio. One becomes a reckless,
kind of reckless,
sexually adventurous prostitute played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, while the other, Brady Corbett, retreats into a reclusive fantasy of alien abduction.
Yes. I read that the movie was praised by psychologists for the accuracy with which it depicted different responses to child sexual abuse. So I think that's very admirable.
Yeah. Had you seen either of these movies before?
No, I had not. And I had never heard of Mysterious Skin. 13 I'd heard of a lot because Evan Rachel Wood is a great actress. She's also bisexual. I really think she's great. And so I'd known about this film and I was like, interesting. There's this like really controversial film about 13-year-olds. You know, I want to see it for a long time. And now having seen it, I will say, yes, what these girls get up to in this film is shocking. I personally at 13 wasn't anywhere close to trying any of the things that these girls try in this film. But at the same time, I didn't feel like it really pushed the envelope that, minus the drugs. There wasn't really anything that happened that was that and crazy.
So I've seen Mysterious Skin holds a very special place in my heart, which is strange to say because watching it now for the first time, I probably saw it when I was like 15. It deals with very heavy themes that I do not remember at all. So it's interesting that Brady Corbett blocks out a lot of like basically all of the child abuse. I do not remember that storyline at all, which is shocking because it's the movie.
Yeah, but it makes sense that if you saw it at 15, your brain might not want to hold on to that.
With 13, that I also saw that, but I didn't see that quite as young. I think I was like in my 20s when I saw 13 because I like knew of it and I finally like watched it and I thought it was pretty good. Rewatching it now, I don't think it's what was scary and frightening to me isn't necessarily what the girls were doing, what Evan Rachel Wood was doing. What was more terrifying is the idea that a person can come into another person's life and influence them and change them and alter them so much. And through Holly Hunter's experience, like from her perspective, like alter her daughter in a way where she doesn't even recognize her, where she's like losing control, or not losing control, but her daughter is like losing her identity by being so heavily influenced by somebody else. And so like, it wasn't necessarily what they were doing was strange to me, but just kind of how this character kind of becomes, such a awful, but like a leech in a way, and is like leeching off of this family.
And that's the Nikki Reed character who is her parents are no longer around. She lives with a cousin or an aunt who's pretty much an absentee parent, very permissive, says, okay, when they go over to her house, okay, girls, you can have one beer because you have homework to do. And they're in 7th grade. You know what I mean? Like there's just this kind of freewheeling environment. And Nikki Reed, you know, kind of gloms on to Evan Rachel Wood's character. They spend a lot of time at Evan Rachel Wood's house. And it's a more loving, kind of attentive environment. So I think Nikki appreciates that. And that's why she kind of wants to stick around. But yeah, she kind of does... Evan's life kind of careens from there. But my interpretation of it is that, yes, Nikki was the influence, but I think the film was trying to suggest that the vulnerability was there from the start because her mom is a recovered alcoholic, but she's dating another addict. And there's been a tumultuous...
A recovering addict also, right?
I don't know. But at one point he said he was going to get loaded. I don't know if he was relapsing or if he was never sober. I guess she did mention his sponsor, so you're probably right. But there was turbulence there, and then there was the implication too that later on you find out that her own father is still around but has another family, and he's like has this job that he needs to, high pressured, high powered job that he needs in order to support these two families, and he's not very present in her life. And so my thought was that the mom just didn't see how her daughter was kind of susceptible to falling into something, she was looking for a way for release, to be noticed, to kind of feel in control because she didn't feel that way at home. You know what I mean?
Evan Rachel Wood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then Holly Hunter is just so, like the mom character, like intertwines herself so intensely with David, like feeling like she can just like touch Evan Rachel Wood whenever she wants. She can walk in a room while she's changing. It's just like it kind of shows. We talk about like overbearing parents or parents who aren't like involved enough, but then it's like there weren't, not to overuse a word, but there weren't like boundaries in place.
No. And I also think that just the film, it's interesting because this film was a lot more mysterious. Skin didn't really explore the parents very much at all, you know? There was very little.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt's mom is Elizabeth Shue, that is kind of a similar character to Holly Hunter's character, where she, even down to like the hair, just kind of is like
And she doesn't age at all
hair.
between the time he's a little boy to the time that he's an adult or an 18-year-old or whatever.
But it doesn't really focus. I mean, Brady Corbett's character, his mom is a little more like straight-laced and, but yeah, it's not really interested in exploring the parent-child dynamic. It's more like how the child interacts with the world once they're like outside of their shelter.
And it was much more about what abuse can do and how that impacts the way you approach intimacy. And so we have Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character seeking out sexual experiences versus Brady's character, who's kind of more trapped in this like, there are things I don't remember, and I think there must be something going on. But he kind of turns to a more fantastical storytelling world. He believes like he was abducted by aliens. He connects with this girl who has similar beliefs about her own life. But then when intimacy is presented to him, so that girl tries to kiss him, and he like doesn't want to touch it at all. He's like alarmed.
He tries to go like down on him. Like it was like really sexually aggressive.
Away.
And yeah, like I said, I love this movie. There's this song called Snowfall that I listened to. Like in high school, I like loaded it on my iPod, and that was like the song that I would like fall asleep to. It was just like, and it was still a really beautiful moment in the movie, but it's just funny as like a 34-year-old. I probably watched that when I was 14 and just like, yeah, like very heavy adult themes. But in my memory, like I was thinking that like it was kind of like waiting, like that Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Brady Corbett were like both like the love interests, and they like you're just like waiting for them to get together at the end of the movie. Like that's how I have it in my mind, but that's not it at all. It's just that they're parallel characters that choose to respond to sexual abuse in different ways. And I don't know how I blocked sexual abuse out of my head.
I mean, honestly, it was very disturbing, the depiction. Like they cast children, and I mean, they didn't show anything
they didn't show it, but it's so suggestive.
I don't know if I had a child, I wouldn't want them to be in this movie. And I don't know if I could watch this movie again because it just was so upsetting to watch.
It is a pretty upsetting movie.
Great performances, like I think an important message, and it was all leading to, you're right, like to Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Brady Corbett coming together. But it was a way of like
they're trying to heal, and like they need to talk about
it. And they were in the space, they were able to get back inside the house where this happened. It was their little league coach, and discuss what happened. And it was they each had a different experience, where Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character was sort of this favorite character, this one who was really groomed and was always present, and Brady's character, it didn't only happen a few times, but that doesn't matter in terms of impact, but just like they kind of get to talk through what happened. It's the first time Brady's really hearing it, but you can tell as Joseph's telling him the story that Brady actually does remember, you know, but he needs to hear it out loud. And it just like, I don't know, it's just really like
heart-wrenching,
horrible,
and devastating and horrible. And what's so interesting too is the movie starts out with, my look play in the beginning was like the sound mixing was kind of hard to hear. They both were like narrating their stories, and it was a little hard for us to hear what they were saying. But yeah, it's like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, like even when he was so young, he like started realizing he had an attraction to
he was attracted
men,
to
and
the
he was
coach.
attracted to the coach. But just because there's attraction, that doesn't mean that it should. Well, he's a fucking child.
Yes,
first of all.
he was like, he looked so little. Like,
no need to focus on their like sexuality, but like Brady Corbett, I don't think it's unclear and not important. His attraction, he could be like asexual.
Well,
he could be
Joseph Gordon-Levitt's friend, who becomes friends with Brady, says he gives off an asexual vibe, which could just be his identity, or it could be a response to what happened. So it's just like a very interesting, like it matters to the story, but it doesn't matter to the story. Like it doesn't justify or explain the abuse, but it's like this could happen to anybody, and it forms your reality going forward. And like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character kind of seeks out these dangerous situations, which could be like a replaying of the trauma, which some people think is like a way to like try and do it again, but do it correctly or fix the problem or whatever it might be. And it's kind of an unconscious response. So just like it was very psychologically rich, but then at the same time,
there was kind of like a indie quality to it that made you, like some of it you just kind of laugh just because it's a little like awkward.
And it's super dated now. Like,
and we're looking at we're looking at it through a lens.
It's like watching
20
Garden
years later.
State, now. It's like, it felt like the Garden State version.
Where it feels like so edgy at the time. And kind of the same with 13. I feel like they're both like related in the same way, but I feel like you and I can both appreciate like the intention. There's like a really strong story there. And to dip back into 13 for a bit, there's like a really 13 keeps like terrible thing after terrible thing after terrible thing keeps happening. And you're thinking it's leading to the climax that's finally going to make Holly Hunter be like, enough. Like, this is over. Like, we need to figure this out. But like, it doesn't, it takes a long time to get there. And it finally leads to, I forget what the incident is I think it's
actually really insidious is that, so basically Evan kind of ends up rejecting Nikki's character a little bit, or like stepping away from this crazy life that they have been undergoing the last few months or whatever. And Nikki's upset by this. So then she starts to like spread rumors about her at school that make other girls mad. And then she ends up hiding drugs all over Evan's room at some point in time, telling her mom that Evan's been dealing drugs. She's been using drugs. She punched me because they both got high off of, what was that? I don't know. They got high off of something and they were like, oh, hit me, because they were feeling numb. And they did it to one another, having fun, laughing, whatever. But then Nikki kind of paints it as though Evan is this awful, bad influence on me, which actually leads her cousin to say we're going to move somewhere else. And so Evan looks like the villain or the one who was the influence instead of what was really going on. And
Holly has no doubt in her daughter and immediately starts projecting. And so what seems like an intervention between these two mother figures, like I know
it was staged like an intervention when she shows up. They're all sitting there.
But then the stepmother to the other girl like turns and Holly Hunter realizes what's happening. And then Evan Rachel Wood is getting really upset. And then like Holly Hunter kicks them out.
And the important part we didn't describe was that then, which is awful, but this woman, this other mother, or she's not a mother, this other cousin.
Well, she's a mother too, though.
But she's not. She's a guardian. Because Nikki reads very much like she's not my mom. Yeah. She says, and look what your daughter's been doing, and shows the cuts on her arm because she's been cutting, self-harming the whole movie.
If anything, gives us more empathy for the character.
I'm like, but I think was this like it might have been a 2000s kind of, like, oh, you're bad if you're cutting, instead of like, you're a person in pain who needs our help. And
I don't think, but you and I were talking after the movie, and you're talking about Seventh Heaven.
I do have
where there was cutting, and then
I don't know if there was, but I feel like there probably was.
Well, in Degrassi there was cutting, and that was definitely around the same time, and it was very like empathetic and dealing with like self-harm is something that people do to like get that release.
Or there's like a bunch of different reasons why people do it, but and so then Evan Rachel Wood is very distressed by what has happened. And she doesn't want her mom around. She doesn't want her mom to touch her. But Holly Hunter insists on saying, like, I don't want to leave you alone. Like, I love you. I love you even when you're like this. Or whatever she says. It's very moving, actually.
I felt the same way. I was like, that was the first, I kind of was holding my breath in that scene. Because it was like, I was really absorbed in like where everything else I was kind of like feeling the dated essence of it. That was like really effective. And I just was really moved by it also.
I was too.
And I think there were moments of mysterious skin, like I think that like just took me back to being a teenager also. And I mentioned that song Snowfall, and there was a moment in the movie, which is why it's stuck in my brain so well, is Michelle Trachtenberg is also in this movie, who's passed away recently. Yes. She's best friends with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Is there attraction there? Like, do you?
So it seems like, yes, Michelle's character is the only person that knows what's happened to Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which honestly was the most disturbing part of the movie. Is one night on Halloween, they're trick-or-treating. They find this other group of children and take a member of their group away to come with them. And it's a boy who's maybe like a little bit, he maybe has a disability of some kind. He's kind of a little different. And then they end up like torturing him basically with firecrackers.
So Michelle was there as a child.
Yes, as a child.
I didn't connect that.
And so, and then what ends up happening is like the
boy's scared and frightened and terrified.
And then he says like,
Joseph Gordon-Levitt says.
Young Joseph Gordon-Levitt is like, don't worry, I know how to handle this. Like when something bad's going to happen, you have to give them like a treat and a reassurance first, or like, no, whatever. And then he also abuses him. Like, I don't know if you remember that part. So it was very, and that's something
where
it was
these are children.
I mean, unfortunately, I think that's another part of the movie that probably is psychologically real, where like if you're a young kid who's been exposed to things that you shouldn't have seen, you're gonna think that you're not gonna think that they're wrong, right? That's because you're a kid, or and then you might end up doing it to someone else.
But I'm speaking on like behalf of like the child actor.
Oh,
Because like there were sometimes where I could be like, oh, they're not telling them the full context of the scene, but I feel like that was like a line of dialogue and emotion that
I felt very uncomfortable watching it.
Wait, I didn't tell my positive part about Mysterious Skin. I'm talking about like Michelle Trachtenberg and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I feel like there's like at least like, so maybe Michelle Moore is like the one like holding a lot of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's secrets.
Well, and she also loves him, but she tells they have a third friend. I don't know his name, but he's queer too, which we know because of the way that he's styled. And
it was interesting because it was like, because also on Degrassi, there's also a character that's similarly dressed like that and is also queer. And why I was really drawn to this movie, I just remember like in the like early 2000s, I was like really looking for footage. In the early 2000s, I was really looking for movies that like was different from like what I saw, like what a stereotypical like gay person would. Like I feel like we had like Will and Grace, and we had the character in like Degrassi, or this character in Mysterious Skin, where there's
you were seeking out. Well, Joseph Gordon, do you feel like, other than the prostitute portion, do you feel like he felt like somebody in terms of representation?
It was different and unique,
and he like. Yeah,
and so I was like really interested in that. And then like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the actor too, is also from like 30 Rock, and I like never thought he was mainstream, and it made me like rethink it. I was like, oh, this is like like someone like I pushed the sex work and all that.
I get that, because it's like you're seeking out, however consciously, like some kind of representation that's not. The kid that stands out, that's into fashion, or like something so.
It can be something beyond.
Like that's not just the only way to be gay, kind of thing. Which
exactly.
I actually think is a very, strong part of this film. And I think it's also based on the novel, and the novelist is gay. So it comes from a real place. Like this person knows what it means to be gay, and it's not just like a stereotype. It's something. There are all different types of gay people.
But there's this really beautiful scene where Michelle, whether her character has an attraction or not to Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but you feel like they're very intertwined and close, and they know each other very well. They're outside, like an outdoor movie theater. And I forget like the line of dialogue, but almost at the same time as like the song Snowfall plays, like it starts just like snowing in the background. It's just like so beautiful. I think it's the cover of the movie even, or one of the varieties of the cover of the movie is this shot. It's what I remember the most, and that's what I chose to remember.
I understand that. I do. And then what do we think about the queer moments in 13?
I just remember the moment where they like...
The girls kiss.
Yeah. And it was kind of like, I knew what it was like leading to, whereas in 2003, maybe I didn't know where it was leading to, but I was like, oh God, they're going to practice kissing on each other. Because
there was a boy coming over, which, that's a part I really appreciate about the movie. Yes, these girls are doing very adult things, like taking drugs,
but they're still
dressing
kids.
Crazily. But
they're kids.
They're kids, and like they were like so giddy and excited about this boy asking Evan Rachel Wood to hang sometime, and it felt very 13 to me.
Describe that scene, because it was really funny.
They're hanging by the dumpsters with a bunch of other people
at the high school,
and this like very like good-looking young boy comes over to talk to Evan Rachel Wood. And I remember what he asked her. He's like, do you want to like hang sometime? And she's like, yeah, sure. And then he walks away. He's like 2 steps away.
You can see him still in the frame.
All the girls converge, screaming like, ah!
But is it like true to...
Yes, I do think that was very realistic.
This isn't high school. This is like...
7th
that
grade.
Weird like middle school time period.
That's a part where this movie... Like, I know that there are 7th graders out there who that they have a much more wild experience. In 7th grade, this was not my life.
Yeah.
Like I was so sheltered. So like watching this movie, that like shocks me to imagine that. Like I don't know how I couldn't have handled anything like that, like at all. None of the things that happened in this movie, beyond the cute like, oh, the boy's asking me out kind of thing, which I feel like was happening in my middle school experiences with like people, but anything beyond that.
The most like romantic intensity that I got for me too. I feel like I was sheltered to a different degree where I didn't choose like
drugs.
But it was like, I think you and I both chose like entertainment and to like watch people betray their lives on the screen for us.
Rather than living our own lives.
But we would do this thing called Skate King.
Oh
that was
my
like
gosh.
once a month every Friday. And that was like
That's when the romance went down.
Get things rolling in your life. Take up roller skating at Skate King in Bellevue, Kirkland, Burien, or Tacoma. Skate King's got what it takes for a great time. Precision skates, terrific snack bar, and a super stereo sound system with a live DJ to play the latest hits. On Friday and Saturday nights, there's disco skating, complete with light show, letting you enjoy the latest dance craze. Private parties are available Monday through Wednesday, and birthday parties at any matinee session. At Skate King. Come on in and get rolling.
There was this thing, snowfall. Well, we had snowball.
Snowball. Okay, tell me your snowball stories. We never talked about them. Do you not have any
So the snowball, so the Skate King itself was a skate rink. No longer exists, but it was like one Friday out of every month. You could go to Skate King and you could just skate around listening to different music. Specifically, I remember YMCA a lot. But at one point in the night, and it would happen every time we'd go, it would be like the romantic part where the lights would dim. And what's that like light effect called? The disco light?
The disco ball.
But it was like white, so it looked like snow, and it was called the snowball.
And boys stood on one side, girls stood on the other.
And the boys would go and
they'd say,
seek
go.
out. Would they do that?
Yes, they would say it on the loudspeaker. They'd be like, okay, go. And then the boys would skate over and they would ask a girl to skate with them.
I participated in every time because it was so thrilling.
To.
Well, it was also so
thrilling.
I was thrilled. Like it was like excited. Like who am I to ask? But was it 7th grade or was that kind of later?
No, I think it was 7th grade because I remember it.
I like don't remember who I'd. Oh, okay. I remember one person I asked.
Okay. You don't have to say the name. I just want to hear the story.
Or no, I'm getting school dances confused.
Well, it's okay. You can bleed those in.
Wait, there was a line though. School dances. I think skating was earlier.
Was like 4th or 5th grade, and then the dances started in 6th grade.
I was much more romantically successful before 7th grade.
Joe once told me that in kindergarten, all of the girls liked him.
There is photographic evidence.
I believe it.
It was beyond that. Girls in Mrs. Watkinson's class.
That's our kindergarten teacher.
would ask me to marry them all the time. And there are like probably 10 different photos of me getting married.
So you said, yes, you were a polygamist at our Catholic school. Okay, so you ask this, you know who you're going to ask. What happens at the Skate King?
You grab their hand and then you basically just like a romantic song plays. Mm-hmm. Usually like an R&B song from the 90s.
Fair.
And you just like skate around the rink holding hands. And it was like by the end of it, I don't know about your hands, but my hand would be sweaty because it'd be so intense.
Well, I only have one memory. I mean, I remember going to Skate King all the time, but I only have one snowball memory. And I'm kind of ashamed of my memory.
What happened?
Somebody asked me, and they were kind of a bad boy, and I was a good girl, and I felt like, I'm going to say yes because I don't want to be mean, but I feel conflicted about this because I can't be seen with a bad boy. So then we would skate, we would like hold hands kind of, but then every so often I would like drop back because I was like embarrassed.
What do you mean drop back? Like you would just stop skating?
I would skate a little slower.
Hoping he wouldn't notice.
And then I would feel guilty and I would speed up.
Were you while still holding hands?
I think we like didn't hold hands the whole time, but I just remember that, and then I'd be like, "No, that's wrong. I need to speed up and be." I said yes, so I got to go back up. It's like so interesting because I feel like that pattern of push pull. It's there from the start. It's there from the start.
Just like our TV shows, we love the push pull.
So I remember that, and then I have a bunch of memories from our dances, and
that's funny. How early was skating? I don't even remember.
I think it's probably 4th and 5th grade.
Okay,
and then it's like the lead up to the big dances where. Then you gotta ask people, and you gotta and ask people to dance and all this stuff. And
why are we talking about this?
Because 13 had a little cute little romance element to it.
Yes, where like the excitement of like asking.
These were kids, and then it made me like understand what was going on in a different way too. Yeah. Like I don't know. And the director, I should say, Catherine Hardwicke, is the woman who directed Twilight, the first Twilight, which of the Twilights is the best one in terms of film.
It's not the same person for every movie.
I don't know actually, but the first one I think is the most solid of the Twilight.
It's good
films.
And we just saw Mickey 17, which also stars Robert Pattinson.
Oh, I was like, what is the connection? Yes, Edward himself, of course.
And I feel like Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson have been making excellent.
They are fantastic
movie decisions.
That's very true. The casting. Good.
The freedom of you guys. This is the Twilight section of our podcast.
Yeah, sorry. We should do them on the podcast
for every episode.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go.
All right.
The allowance and success they got from the Twilight series.
Yeah.
It's allowed them to be more adventurous.
I think that's really
in the
true.
roles that they take.
I think that's really true.
Anyway,
Wow.
back to 13.
Back to 13.
And what's Evan Rachel Wood up to?
Well, I don't know. I mean, she was in Westworld, amazing in Westworld. I do know that she had a court case against
Marilyn Manson.
For, I think, abuse. And, you know, I think it's amazing that I think she's a very strong person to sue. And yeah, I just think that's really great. And she's awesome and she's a great actress, well, etc. But I don't know what she's been doing lately in terms of film and TV.
When Westworld, the pilot episode, I watched that like 3 or 4 times. I was so gripped
It's
by it.
a very excellent.
The pilot itself is like a movie that I
It's
can
super
appreciate
great.
on its own, much like the OA.
Joe loves talking about the
I
OA.
love the
We should
OA.
do that
I
because people love it.
would do an OA rewatch.
All right. Okay.
Well, what's Evan Rachel Wood working on right now?
She's going to be in Queen, which is a short 1,000 Paper Cranes. Did you read that book as a kid?
No. I think I was in 3A and I think 3B read it.
So you never read that book?
I know what it's about.
You don't even know what it's about?
I know what
Oh.
it's about. A girl dying from cancer believes that making 1,000 paper cranes will give her a chance to make a wish.
Mm-hmm.
And she dies in the process. And now people continue the tradition to honor her memory, which is beautiful
Yeah.
and powerful and intense for a child.
Yes.
In a good way, though.
I do have some questions for you based on our viewing of these 2 films.
Wait, my character, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Your character? I, as a kid, he's very beautiful. I definitely had a crush on him in many things.
In 30 Rock, he had like long hair and he was like such a little kid in that show. Again,
When you say 30 Rock,
the TV show.
is it? I thought it was called Third Rock.
It is.
You're spreading misinformation. Joseph Gordon-Levitt was not in 30 Rock.
Third Rock from the Sun. But that's like what I think put him on the map. And then he was in Mysterious Skin. And it was like, wow, this like major character is in this movie in a queer role. But then he was like in Inception. And
Yeah.
then he was in The Dark Knight Rises. He was in Looper.
Looper.
Don
Love
John.
Looper.
He was like in all these movies.
He also forgot about 500 Days of Summer.
500 Days. That was part of that renaissance. Well, not even a renaissance.
I
His,
feel like
career
he was
taking off, yeah.
he was a huge movie man. Like he was in everything, and you know, I think people really and I understand why.
And so it's weird in my mind. It's like, wow, like a man, like an older man could like get a second chance in life. And I'm like, he wasn't even in his 30s yet.
you were
I
thinking
think.
he was an older man. So I see this thing about age for you has always existed.
Probably. Well, it used to be everyone was older than me, but now people are either my age or much younger than me. And it will
Yeah.
continue going that way.
I do wonder what it's like to watch things in your 50s when most content is about
Well, yeah,
younger
because everything
people.
becomes ages like kind of squished. You kind of like
Mm-hmm.
sandwich things more together. Whereas like in childhood, it's like someone who's 14, even someone who's like 16. It's
It
like they're
seems so
much
much older than you,
me.
even if it's closer. It's very true.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads perfectly into my questions.
Yeah, what's your question?
So these films or content that look at youth or dangerous youth or wayward youth seem like ubiquitous in our culture, and they seem to like come back around for each generation. So I think our generation, or I guess Gen Z's generational take on this might be Euphoria. You know what I'm saying? No, not the younger Gen Z. And for us, it probably was like Skins or I guess Degrassi, even though that's more
Okay.
wholesome.
Yeah, Euphoria of this generation was like the Degrassi of my generation.
Yeah, and it's like this, it's supposed to shock, but in reality, this is just something that keeps coming back around. And is it really for teens or is it for adults is my question. And there was a review from the critic Manhola Dargis, who is a critic I've read before. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he is he does a lot of film reviews. This is for the LA Times about 13. He characterized it, I think he's a he. Dargis characterized it as an arty exploitation flick. Only audiences that have been locked inside a bomb shelter for the last 50 years will be shocked by what happens in 13. The clothes are scantier and the music heavier on the bass. Since James Dean yelled, "You're tearing me apart," to his befuddled father in the mid-1950s melodrama Rebel Without a Cause. But the story about the anguish outsider trying to fit in no matter what hasn't changed much since the movies discovered the troubled teenager. So this critic connects it all the way back to Rebel Without a Cause from the 1950s. This idea that we're looking at youth, and I feel like older people want to look at youth, they want to be scandalized, but they also kind of connect to the story of like being on the outside and causing trouble and riling up the older people, and it's just kind of like a tale as old as time. And
isn't that interesting? Because it's like, and then the storytelling, it's like they always want to like push the envelope for
as far
like
as they can.
the older generation, who at one time was part of the generation that was pushing the envelope.
Exactly.
So it's like interesting.
It's like a cycle.
It's a cycle, and so that will be interesting. Just like getting older and see how that like cycle changes, but then also stays the same in a different way.
Exactly. And yeah, and I just think it's interesting that 13 was written by an adult and a child. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like a pairing of like, but then it's still the kind of same.
I'm glad you're reminding me of this. This is such a random aside. A much safer and gentler version of this is it was the same technique used for Sister Tia and Tamara.
Much I missed you.
They'd live their like lives, and I forget like over what period the seasons would be filmed, but I think they'd go off to school, or I think they'd go on summer break, and they would describe, the writers would like sit them down.
That's so cool.
And have them
I didn't know
describe
that.
everything, and then the writers would go off and write stories based on what Tia and Tamara told them. So kind of the same technique used in 13.
Well, I mean, Sister, I feel like holds up. My sister rewatched it and she said it was good.
I rewatched it.
It was good.
Within like the last 2 years, and I loved it.
You and Caroline.
And it's interesting because like Mysterious Skin, I mean, I think it's much heavier content.
It is.
Even if it's like the filmmaking's, I wouldn't just say like cheesy, but it's like,
it's of its time.
It's of its time more than 13 is.
Yes.
But 13 is also of its time, but
in a different way.
Rewatching Sister gave me like a lot of like nostalgia for that time period. And it's really interesting because that's like very placed in like the late 90s. And that even though it was like in the early 2000s also. But I feel like Mysterious Skin will be harder to revisit because of the more difficult themes.
Right.
But there was a weird nostalgia I had for 13 that I feel like recaptured, and like that idea of being like, I was never a teenage girl going through this process, but that like the rebelliousness. And I remember people like I can remember people in my grade school like having these experiences, maybe not as intense, but or even their parents like being really concerned about the movie 13 because it came out around the time that I was 12, 13.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like for like even like the filmmaking style, I was like, wow, I have like a lot of nostalgia for this. Where I was like Mysterious Skin, I was like, I don't think I want to revisit this.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think also with 13, the clothing, the language, like the slang they would use, the music, it all felt very 2000s. And that part, like, I forget what the phrases they were using. I mean, they used ghetto a lot, for example, which like I would never use that term now probably. But I do remember people using it when we were younger. And so I can kind of see how it's like, and this is supposed to be like California girls, you know, they go hang out on Melrose, like just these like white urban girls. Like, where do they live? I don't know. These white girls from California.
But they're probably like in the Hollywood area.
Yeah. So it just kind of is like a very specific time and place. And it felt like it captured that, but not in a more self-aware way, weirdly, because I feel like sometimes you hear outdated slang and you think the movie's like trying to be cool. I didn't really get that impression, probably because of their age. Like they're so young that you can just tell that they're using slang that's not going to be cool forever.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the dynamic between the writer and the actor,
that's probably why
they were able to pull from that.
Yeah, I agree.
And then also to compare like Mysterious Skin, it's in a small town. I forget which Kansas. They're in Kansas.
Oh yeah.
And there's some,
which is very confusing because they take the bus to New York. What?
Which a good chunk of the movie takes place in New York. And
I feel like we're not going to describe the scenes that were most impactful because they're very upsetting.
But I was just going to say, again, like the movie does a really good job. Mysterious Skin does a really good job of like Brady Corbett's character arrives to find Joseph Gordon-Levitt just as Joseph Gordon-Levitt's
in New York.
Moved to New York.
But what's incredible is that if he didn't go to New York and have the experiences that he has there that we're not going to describe, because I have to tell you, this movie is very upsetting and very dark. I don't know if he had encountered Brady before, if he would have been ready to talk to him about that and to speak, to connect with him in that way. I think that's not what would have happened.
I think more so to connect with, to have the maturity to connect with him in that way, because like the inappropriate relationship that Joseph Gordon-Levitt had with his friends, like even like Michelle Trachtenberg, like there was one point where he like just like showed his genitals to her, and it was like, this is before they moved to New York. He was like, He was like,
That wasn't Michelle. You mean when he had crabs?
yeah.
That was the boy.
He did it to both his friends.
He did?
Yeah, I forget why with Michelle. He got a blowjob and he showed Michelle the marks that the person
Oh,
left.
yeah, I do remember that. Okay.
And so I think that he just like had a very like inappropriate relationship with his friends.
Yeah.
And like didn't know where to like draw the line, and maybe would have even like tried to make a pass at Brady Corbett, but now he like had the emotional intelligence. But still some of the stuff that he was telling Brady was like really...
I think Brady needed to hear it though. You know what I mean?
It
But
was the truth. It's like what happened.
It was terrible. I thought that what was going to happen there was that Joseph was going to lie to him to try and spare him. And I thought that because I've seen a terrible documentary about, I forget what it's called, but it's about two identical twins who experienced child sexual abuse, or two twins who experienced, I don't know if they were identical, who experienced abuse. And then one got into some sort of bicycle accident when he was a preteen and lost all of his memories, or like many of his memories. And then his brother started like helping him like to remember what their family life was like. And he told this whole like idyllic story about their great family. And it wasn't until much later when he discovered like a creepy photograph, and he was like, what's going on? And then it turns out his brother had lied to him because he wanted, like, if I could
protect
he was like,
him.
if I could take away my memories, I would. And so he tried to do that. It was like, and then it just like, it was an awful story, but very good documentary.
It's really interesting because, yeah, it's like out of the interest, it's very like empathetic to like want to protect someone. But
Yes.
yeah, it's like Brady Corbett's character all his life had been like built up this story to protect himself. And like once I think
he desperately wanted the truth, but
he
his
desperately
version of the truth was a protective
and
feature.
then he was finally ready when he interacted with Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part felt, this was turned into a play also. And like
Yes.
that felt very much like
theatrical.
a play. And while it's like really hard to like hear and watch, it like felt very like cathartic and
Yes.
powerful and made for a really strong story.
I thought it was interesting because there were Christmas carolers who showed up at the door. I don't know if you noticed, they were singing Silent Night, which really struck me because in Spotlight, which is an excellent film as well, there is also a Silent Night sequence with children carolers, and Mark Ruffalo's in the church looking at all the kids singing the song, and he's like thinking about all the kids who have been impacted by what's happened in the church. And I thought that was really an interesting parallel that
they chose
that
to
song.
do that.
And I can understand why, like Silent Night, the idea of not speaking and the silence that surrounds these topics that harm people. And yeah, it's very intense.
And the holidays supposed to be like
Yes,
beautiful
the
and
irony
happy.
of that,
The
and-
irony of it.
But okay, a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
So in these youth films, there is also often a queer element. In 13, we see how it's kind of like girls like exploring their sexuality to like practice, but also there's like they really focus on the kiss. It's kind of like ooh, look at these bad girls kissing. You know what I mean?
They're kissing just for a little too long to just be practice.
And I also think it's interesting that in Mysterious Skin, they decided to have the queer character be the more sexually, the one who explores this trauma via being hypersexual as opposed to hyposexual, like Brady. I think that's an interesting choice. And it's like the queer character. And then even in Euphoria, like we got Rue, we got, what's Hunter Schafer's character's name?
I should know, but I don't. Hunter Schafer's character, I think that's fine.
She's such a good name in that show. I don't remember what it is, but whatever. Is
it like a name? Is it a flower name? No, I'm curious.
I gotta know. But yeah, just like the way queerness kind of operates in these stories. On the one hand, it's like, yeah, being queer is just a part of life. And like, of course, kids who explore or do, or, you know, whatever's happening, like that's going to be part of the story. But I do think it's like interesting that it often appears in these stories that are designed to like shock and disturb adult audiences. Jules, which is a good name for her character. It really fits. Any thoughts about that? That's not really a question.
Was it? I was gonna say, was there a question in there?
So much as a statement.
And what was your statement that
My question was, how does queerness function in these stories?
Queerness is like a matter. It's like something that it's a very coming of age element. It's like a part of yourself that you like grow into and like realize and develop.
Right.
And so I feel like that's really fitting to just like a general coming of age story, whether it's like you're changing yourself as Evan Rachel Wood's character does from who she was to who she is, or like even like sexual identity to that Mysterious Skin explores much more. I think it's like it it like fits nicely into that like coming of age element. I don't know if that's what that
I mean, it's really
fits into your
whatever
statement.
you wanted to say, you know?
Okay.
I mean, I was thinking, like, is there anything in it that's like exploitive or like, you know what I mean? Or like tying queerness to something that's
As like an opportunity to then like be like,
ooh, the kids are doing bad things and there's gay stuff, you know what I mean? Like kind of tying it all together in like in a way that's like unusual. But on the other hand, it is like a normal part of coming of age. So it's hard to say.
I really like Mysterious Skin was really important to me. It was really important to me. And I love that it didn't shy away from it. I probably shouldn't have been watching it at such a young age, but I'm glad it was made.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's an intense watch, but I'm glad I saw it.
We watched and we did an episode on Beautiful Thing.
Yes.
Quite a bit ago, and that was like the 90s. And Mysterious Skin is like a much more intense version of that. But that was like another movie
It did have a similar vibe.
in my collection of like kind of like accepting yourself in like whatever way that
Looks like.
might be, and that like something like you can grow from.
Yeah,
You can grow,
you can.
and we are growing all the time.
Sorry, that really snapped me back into Severance mode with Mr. Bilchuk being like, grow.
Hey, no crossover.
It's like-
This isn't a mini episode.
My obsession is just so strong right
leaking
now.
in.
I'm like, yes.
All right, what other questions do you have?
Well, I really just have one more, which was we were done with this movie. We talked about like these movies. We talked about how a lot of these topics, like cutting or whatever it might be, we learned about through Chicken Soup,
Yeah.
a booklet of short stories that dealt with very difficult topics. I think they were written by young people and just compiled into a book, but they always had like a lesson component to it. So I just thought it was interesting that like those are directed at children.
And it's kind of like it's giving you like hints of what like more adult themes
And teaching you, trying to teach you.
Yeah.
Whereas like these movies are not, well, Mysterious Skin maybe a little bit, but like I feel like 13's not trying to teach you a lesson. It's just like, look. It's not really a question again.
Was Mysterious Skin? I thought it also was just having you more like look and
I
observe.
guess so, but I guess there is like a message about. Well, no, I guess you're right. It's more
Because you
look
have
and
to.
observe.
They both have to go through their journeys to get to the end.
Yeah.
Like, whereas like Chicken Soup, I feel like it's much more like planted. Like
Here's the problem. Here's
the problem. Here's the solution.
Or,
Almost-
but sometimes didn't they end unhappily? Sometimes
probably, and where they also the Chicken Soup was
for
very
the teenage soul.
for the teenage soul.
But then there was an adult version.
They were also for like the
Christian
geared towards
soul.
Christian
I had
souls
that one too.
and towards like kids. Like it was like there were spin-offs of this, and that was a huge part of a lot of my reading went to
I had
Chicken Soup.
so many of these books. I got a Chicken Soup for the Soul.
I know what to get you for Christmas. Chicken Soup for the queer soul.
Was there? Do you think that existed?
No, because I think it was more Christian leaning.
Okay, here's what it says about it. Chicken Soup for the Soul, LLC, is an American self-help and consumer goods company based in Coscob, Connecticut. It is known for the Chicken Soup for the Soul book series. The first book, like most subsequent titles in the series, consisted of an inspirational true stories about ordinary people's lives. The books are widely varied, each with a different theme. The company has branched out into other categories such as food, pet food, and television programming.
I feel like it doesn't. Do they have any titles? I feel like that would be much more.
There was Chicken Soup for the Soul, a second helping of Chicken Soup for the Soul, a third serving, a fourth course, a fifth portion, a sixth bowl, etc., etc. Chicken Soup for the adopted soul, for the African American soul, for the soul of American, for the American Idol soul, for Chicken Soup for the Soul, Angels Among Us, Answered Prayers, Baseball Fans, Be the Best You Can Be, Beach Lover Soul, Best Mom Ever, A Book of Miracles, Breast Cancer Survivor, Bride Soul.
Wow.
Oh, there's even. Oh my gosh, that was just A through B. There's C through D. There's E through G. There's H through M.
This was really like a Marvel universe. That
Oh
they
my
created for
gosh,
these
there were
books.
so many.
Yeah.
I just controlled
Because-
F, queer and gay, nothing came up. LGBTQ, no.
But yeah, because it's like people would write in and share their stories. Was it like done through like a Dear Amy where like someone.
I just don't remember. I think it was no. I think they were told. I don't know. I don't remember.
Let's wrap this up.
Well, everybody, this has been our
We'll
double
tie
feature.
Chicken Soup into. Let's offer up a little bit. How do we connect Chicken Soup to the sign off?
Oh, let's give you a nice warm bowl of chicken soup to leave you. Or you know what I used to have in the 2000s a lot? Those handheld Campbell soups. Did you ever have
That
those?
you like sip?
Yeah. What were they called? They were called something. Soup by the hand. Soup by the hand. Brought them to lunch all the time. One time I accidentally microwaved it with the plastic still on. It caused a huge fire. Not fire. The microwave kind of like went a little crazy.
The house burned down. Let's forget about it.
No, it was at school. I just remember this girl in my class, like,
Sacred
tentatively,
Heart?
no, in high school. Tentatively approaching. Does this surprise you, this story? Does
Not
this
really.
surprise you? Yeah.
One time I microwaved butter that was wrapped in foil. So my dad was in the kitchen. He like freaked out because it started sparking, and I didn't connect that it was the butter. It was the foil that was created that. And I just opened the microwave. I was like, oh, that's weird. And I like started again, and my dad freaked out again. I was like, oh, it's the foil. But anyway, chicken soup for the
Soul.
chicken
For your
soup for the
soul.
soul. In a way, Mysterious Skin and 13 both functioned as
Soup for our souls.
soup for our souls. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Queer Cinema Catchup. I'm Joe.
And I'm Allison.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Well, chicken soup for the soul.